right, today's not supposed to be a long study at all. Um, I'm just grateful I'm even able to do this study right now. But today is not a long study at all. Definitely a good one. Um, okay, I think I'm good. Yeah, I'll go ahead and start in about like 25 seconds. About 25 seconds. But shalom, shalom to you if you are watching today or later on YouTube or IG. I appreciate you. Please make sure you use these studies as a tool for your own learning, but not the end all and be all. Make sure you use it as a tool for your study, for your own study. But I hope you guys are doing well. I'll go ahead and pray in about a couple seconds or so, 10 seconds. I think I have everything I need. Sirach 4 is where we will be primarily be reading from, or Ecclesiasticus. It's also known as Ecclesiasticus. Alright, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and pray in. Alright, dear Abba Yah, we just thank you for who you are and what you have done for us and the things that you have planned and have already have come to fruition. And we just thank you just for your word, for just being able to study your word today, to be able to learn more about your word, to be able to look into the things that you've blessed us to understand and know, and be able to read these living words that our spirit is consuming, and our spirit is dividing and helping us learn and teaching us and able to absorb it for us to actually do these things and not just be a hearer, but also be a doer. We thank you just for pulling us through throughout our week and be able to start our week. And for those who are working in different avenues of their lives, we just thank you for blessing us with the energy and the endurance to be able to push through and go through the things that we're going through, and be able to gain your rest in various days and be able to gain the shalom that surpasses all understanding from you. And we just thank you for your Mashiach, for just allowing us to be able to understand the ways that you have planned and the ways that you have established for this whole walk that we are trying to do as carefully as possible and walk in the narrow ways. And we just love you. We just ask that you allow this study to be a blessing for others, for not only for me, but also for my brothers and sisters whom will hear. And we ask that you remove me completely, Abiyah, that you allow your word to stand first and foremost, and allow it to speak into the ears of those who are seeking more understanding from you. And we just allow your spirit to just dwell in us and in this study. And we just give you all the praise, glory, and honor in the name of your Son. We pray. Amen. Amen. Someone also was telling me about saying Yamein. So I think that's cool too. So Amen, Yamein. All right, y'all. So we are in Sirach 4. Shout out to my brothers that I do Bible study with in our group. It is closed right now, but I appreciate those brothers. We're going through the book of Sirach together, and I just so happened to not be able to make a study one day and on our Sirach 4 study. And so I actually had a bunch of things to share with them, and I told them I was going to actually make sure I do a study on it, so that way they'll actually have it, since I missed it last time. So, but I think this is very significant chapter, for us to be able to learn and be able to see the things that's within this chapter, because it's very overlooked. And as you guys see, the main topic is going to be about the fatherless, the orphan, and the widow, right? So, yeah, so we're going to go verse by verse study in Sirach 4 and get to it. And like I said, this one shouldn't be long. It's going to be pretty much straight to the point. We're definitely got some scriptures to read. But, as always, that's always the great part about it. Making sure we're verifying in the scriptures what it's talking about. So, let's get to my first slide here. All right, so as always, heart, mind, and spirit set. So we have foundations. All right, so I'm huge on foundations, as we all should be when it comes down to this word. We want to try to establish as much foundations as possible. And with the foundations, you're able to learn more and gain improve your foundational understanding of this word by gaining different scriptures or seeing different scriptures, comparing scripture with scripture, connecting various amounts of things together, right? And so the more you build on a foundation and have it solid, the better you are, the better understanding you have. And then new understanding that you gain, you're able to divide it and add to different portions of your foundations. So always understand that it takes time. It takes time. There's certain people who may get it faster than others, but ultimately, this walk is not just a one-day thing. It's not a one-week thing. This is a however long the Most High allows you to live development type of thing, right? So you want to continue to build on your foundations and the things that you may see as far as like esoteric or, all these things that are like, that tend to just be like mind-blowing. You also want to enjoy those things, so there are mysteries, right, in the scriptures, but at the same time, you can gain so much understanding, supposed understanding and knowledge of mysteries that you also miss out on your foundations, right? So just want to make sure we don't miss out on understanding more about the foundations, right? And then, of course, we connect scriptures with scriptures. So if you, there's actually sites that you can find, intertextual, I think .com, that's the site where you can find scriptures that are connected with different scriptures. It'll actually tell you, and there's different websites like that will you type in a certain scripture, and you'll actually gain more understanding of that scripture through other scriptures, right? So that's a beautiful thing. If you have nothing, like if you have no internet ever, and you're just by yourself or whatever the case is, you always will know that that's the foundation of studying, is connecting scripture with scripture, right? And then divide it and separate it like a surgeon. So basically that means to study to show yourself approved. So if you're able to study to show yourself approved, that means that you're trying to firstly look at scripture, absorb it, understand it a little bit, connect it, and then you spend time with it, right? So anytime that I've presented a new book, I've always spent time with it, right? Because it's living, right? So you want to make sure that the scriptures, especially what I do, if I'm putting out information, I want to make sure I spend time with it and be able to verify, what's in those scriptures, right? So even in your own studies, you want to take time. You want to make sure you connect it. You want to make sure you apply it, especially if you're trying to change in a positive way, especially if you're going through different trials and tribulations and you're trying to apply a scripture to bring yourself out of that trial and tribulation, or to pass it, or to conquer it. It's more than just reading it and saying, okay, I'm going to do it, right? It's the foundations. It's the fear, it's the righteousness, it's the wisdom that's going to be in your spirit that allows you to do what it's actually telling you to do, right? So we want to divide it like a surgeon. We want to make sure we connect these scriptures, and then we also want to build our character in the Most High, right? So in 1 Samuel 13:14b, it's telling you that the Most High is looking for a man or woman after his own heart, okay? After his own heart. So essentially that is his character. That's his character that we are trying to strive to put on us, and to make sure that we're trying to live out his character in this world. Because essentially, what we want to understand is when we get judged in our judgment day, you're going to be judged as either righteous or unrighteous, right? And in order for you to pass that trial, in order for you to even be judged as righteous, he wants to see if your character letter is just like him. It's just like the Father. It's just like his Son. It's just like the prophets that came before us, the godly men and women that came before us that found out and understood the path of righteousness. Our character letter should reflect just like them in order to be judged as righteous, because that's what's required, right? So if you need to find out more information on that, I do have a study called, I think it's the Matsima one. It's a spiritual warfare series, Matsima. And so I went into detail about the judgment day, basically about the trial that we all have that allows us to either be judged as righteous or judged as unrighteous. All right. So we want to build our character, right? And then Sirach is a must read and a must study. You guys definitely, I grew up loving Proverbs, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to have found Sirach, Ecclesiasticus, because it's just like it, and it's a little bit more detailed, because Sirach, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. So that's the awesome thing about the book of Sirach. So I just definitely encourage you guys to read that as well. And yeah, so that is our heart, mind, and spirit set. So without further ado, please have Sirach 4 out, and if you don't, of course I will be reading it. All right. And of course, I have these notes here for you guys to have. If you ever need any of these notes, you always can message me. If you like to screenshot them on here, totally fine. But if you don't, want my picture in there, of course, please don't scratch that out. You can always ask me for them. Or if you like to write, that's totally fine as well. All right. So Sirach 4. So I'm going to read verses 1 through 6, and I'm going to recap. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to make sure we hit these different points. All right. Sirach 4 says, "My son, do not deprive the poor of his living. Do not make the needy eyes wait long. Do not make a hungry soul sorrowful, or provoke a man in his distress. Do not add more trouble to a heart that is provoked. Do not put off giving to him who is in need." Let's see here. "Do not reject a suppliant in his affliction, and do not turn your face away from a poor man. Do not turn your eye away from one who asks. Give no occasion to a man to curse you. For if he curses you in the bitterness of his soul, he who made him will hear his supplication." All right, so we have a theme here, right? The theme is giving. It's talking about the poor, okay? Talking about the poor and giving to the poor and things that is involved with it, right? So, of course, we're going to connect some scriptures with scriptures here. I don't know if any of you guys ever read the Testament of Job. I presented it before in a few studies already, and I've shared links on it. So I just want to make sure that if you haven't read it, I think it's a must read. It's just an awesome book to be able to read a lot more about Job and a lot more details on the things that he had going within his own life, right? So you get the regular canon Job, and then you're actually able to get a lot more understanding of Job and who he was, and even of his wife. There's a little bit more connections about his wife, okay? So, again, we just read Sirach 4, 1 through 6. And I'm going to read a little bit. I want to get another translation on here, because it's talking about duties towards the poor man. All right. Let me see here. Computer, laptop is a little slow. All right. So remember, as we're about to read a little bit of Job, Testament of Job, it's saying that do not deprive the poor of his living. Don't keep a needy person waiting. And if someone is hungry, don't grieve them. Make sure you give to them. Don't anger a man that's in want. Do not add to the troubles of an angry mind or delay your gift to a beggar. Don't reject an afflicted suppliant, nor turn your face away from the poor. Don't avert your eye away from the needy, nor give a man occasion to curse you because you looked away from the needy. Okay? So Job, what you're going to see here in chapter 3 is how giving Job was. Okay? In the regular canon, you will find, I think it's in chapter 1 or 2, but you will see that he had plenty. Okay? He had a lot of things. And he was a very blessed man, essentially rich, but he was very God-fearing or Yah-fearing. He loved the Most High, and he made sure he sacrificed, did sacrifices unto him, not just for himself, but also for his children, right? And so he was a very wealthy man, and essentially I think he may have been like a king or like a leader of the people in that land, okay? So in the Testament of Job, I'm going to read to you how rich this man was, okay? So it says, "For I had 130,000 sheep, and of these I separated 7,000 for the clothing of orphans and widows, and of needy and sick ones. I had a herd of 800 dogs who watched my sheep, and besides these 200 to watch my house." Okay? "And I had 9 mills working for the whole city, and ships to carry goods, and I sent them into every city, and into the villages, to the feeble and sick, and to those that were unfortunate. And I had 340,000 nomadic donkeys, and of these I set aside 500. And of the offspring of these I ordered to be sold, and proceeds to be given to the poor and to the needy." So as you see already, Job is a very, very, very giving person. Verse 5, it says, "From all the lands the poor came to meet me, for the 4 doors of my house were open, each being in charge of a watchman who had to see whether there were any people coming, asking for alms, whether they would see me sitting at one of the doors so that they could leave through the other and take whatever they needed. I also had 30 immovable tables set at all hours for the strangers alone, and I also had 12 tables spread for the widows. And if anyone came asking for alms, he found food on my table to take all he needed, and I turned nobody away to leave my door with an empty stomach. I also had 3,500 yokes of oxen, and I selected of these 500 and had them tend to the plowing. And with these I had done all the work in each field by those who would take it in charge, and I laid aside the income of their crops for the poor on their table. I also had 50 bakeries from which I sent the bread to the table for the poor, and I had slaves selected for their service. There were also some strangers who saw my goodwill. They wished to serve as waiters themselves. Others, being in distress and unable to obtain a living, came with a request saying, "Please, since we can also fill this office of servants and have no possession, have pity on us and advance money to us in order that we may go into the great cities and sell merchandise. And the surplus of our profit we may give as help to the poor, and then we will return to you your own money." So it's like essentially like paying it forward in a sense, right? "And when I heard this, I was glad that they should take this all together from me," this is Job speaking, "for the farming of charity for the poor. And I gave them what they wanted with a willing heart." Very key, with a willing heart. "And I accepted their written bond, but would not take any other security from them except the written document." So he wasn't having them do a down payment. "And they went abroad and gave to the poor as far as they were successful. Frequently, however, some of their goods were lost on the road or on the sea, or they would be robbed of them. Then they would come and say, 'Please act generously towards us in order that we may see how we can restore to you your own.' And when I heard this, I had sympathy with them and handed their bond to them, and often, having read it before them, tore it up and released them of their debt, saying to them, 'What have I consecrated for the benefit of the poor? I will not take from you.' And so I accepted nothing from my debtor. And when a man with cheerful heart came to me, saying, 'I am not in need to be compelled to be a paid worker for the poor, but I wish to serve the needy at your table,' He consented to work and he ate his share. So I gave him his wages nevertheless, and I went home rejoicing. This is very awesome. You don't really read the detail like this in really a lot of books. But you see his character. You see how deeply giving he was and very uh, strategic with his riches. Right? You always hear about a rich man not going to inherit the kingdom of the Most High because of the fact that this where their head is and where their mind and their heart is all about their riches, right? But you see here the total opposite, and this is a man of the Most High, this is a man of Yah that is using his riches to serve the poor. Okay, few verses left. All right, it says, verse 28, and when he did not wish to take it, I forced him to do so, and saying, I know that you are a laboring man who looks for and waits for his wages, and you must take it. I never deferred paying the wages of the hireling or any other, nor kept back in my house for a single evening his hire that was due to him. Those that milked the cows and the ewes signaled to the passers-by that they should take their share. For the milk flowed in such plenty, and it curdled into butter on the hills and by the roadside and by the rocks in the hills, and the cattle lay, which had given birth to their offspring. For my servants grew weary keeping the meat of the widows and the poor and dividing it into small pieces. For they would curse and say, oh, that we had of his flesh, that we could be satisfied. Although I was very kind to them. I also had 6 harps, and I also had also a cithara and a decaward, and I struck it during the day. So these are instruments that he had. I took the cithara, and the widows responded after their meals. And with the musical instruments I reminded them of the Most High, and that they should give praise to him. And when my maidservants would murmur, then I took the musical instruments and played as much as they would have done for their wages, and gave them respite from their labors and sighs. Okay? So in the chapter 4, it's definitely, another, obviously, like I said, I would love for you guys to just read this on your own, because it just continues. It continues to show you more of what Job was going to go through. And the enemy, of course, was trying to break Job down, right? He made sure that he asked permission from the Most High in order to attack him. But the whole reason why it started was because Job wanted to destroy the idols in the land. And the Most High tells him in chapter 1 of the Testament of Job that if you go do this, the enemy is going to try to kill, steal, and destroy you, and you have to fight like an athlete, right? So despite what it was, even Job, he agreed and said, I'm ready for that. Like, that's totally fine. He can attack my riches. He can do whatever he wants to. But at the end of the day, he's not, I'm still going to live by your word. I'm still going to live and do the things that you require for me to do in order to live, right? So it's a beautiful thing. So make sure you go read that Testament of Job. But as you see, very rich man, right? So going back to Sirach chapter 4, when we see verse 1, it says, deprive not the poor of his living, and do not keep the needy eyes waiting. Did Job do that? Absolutely not. He literally made sure all the food, all these things were set out for the people to gain, for the people to eat it. Even the stranger, okay? And you notice it did say the widow, the fatherless, the orphan, okay? He didn't grieve anyone who was hungry, and he even paid wages to someone that even didn't want the wages. They just wanted to volunteer. He still gave it to them, and he rejoiced. He also didn't afflict anyone, even though the people that his servants were murmuring because of the work that was required. He still blessed them, right? So that wasn't on him. That was actually on the servants, okay? And that's a big thing too. Make sure you go research murmuring, because murmuring is is a sinful thing that the Most High hates. He really does not like murmuring, and that includes us. Like, if you're going through something, right, and obviously if it's a struggle, stressful, whatever it may be, we don't want to murmur and sit there and talk about and complain about all the things that we're going through, right? The Israelites were murmuring in the desert. They were murmuring a lot of times on their way, and they're like, oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, man, I don't know why we're walking so long. man, this is tiring. Like the murmuring, he hates it because he's like, I'm gonna give you what you're asking me for. You know who I am. So what's the point of murmuring, right? So the service for murmuring, and that wasn't Job. Job was very giving. All right, very very giving, and he loved it. His heart was in it. Okay. So another thing, this is very overlooked. If this is something, I'm going to talk about the year of Jubilee. Okay. So the Jubilee, the word Jubilee, it means flow maker. Okay, flow maker and liquidation. Okay, it's the etymology is from the word yabal, Yabal, and it means to carry along in a flow. Okay, so you're thinking liquid, flow maker, liquidation. Okay. Now it says that the words, like, because when you have the etymology with Hebrew, you may have a noun, but you may have a verb that's going to be within that noun. Okay, so that's how the Hebrew breaks down. You'll have different words of etymology that's connected to each other. Okay, so with Jubilee, even though it means flow maker, sorry about that. We're going to read more on the things that are within the word Jubilee. Okay, so there's a verb called named Balal, Balal. It means to mix something with oil, usually flour products, usually as a ritualistic food preparation. The emphasis of this verb lies on saturation and overflowing. To fill something with oil until it can absorb no more and begins to reject an excess of oil. Okay, so we're talking about overflowing. Okay, and so let me actually show you guys too, if I can. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll go ahead and so emphasis of this verb, saturation, overflowing. To fill something with oil, it can absorb no more and begins to reject an excess of oil. The noun belil describes a very much mix for animals to eat. Okay, very much mix for animals to eat. The noun shebelul describes a snail or animal that looks saturated with oil. So essentially what we're getting from this first paragraph is about mixing, fruit preparation, something that mixes with oil and is overflowing with it. Okay. So the second one is going to be a verb yabal, speaks mostly of a flowing along from some course, which requires the bottom of the course to be saturated and reject any further absorption. Okay. What we're seeing key words like water, flowing, streaming, producing, soil. What else does it say here? Something that derives and that drives a flow. Okay, and it's also saying here a noun refers to the whole world economy. All right, and then the last one here, Abel. It says, like the previous ones, in that it describes a drive of liquid or semi-liquid elements along with some collective force. It's often used to describe a collective mourning. Let's see here. Yeah, so let's say the verb is also describe the driving of camels. Okay, so not bad. So let's go to the bottom here. The Hebrew word where our term Jubilee comes from is the same as the Hebrew word for ram's horn. But that doesn't mean that the year of Jubilee was known as the year of the ram's horn. It merely means that a ram's horn was known as a flow maker, for the obvious reasons that a ram follows its horn and the herd follows the ram. The name Year of Jubilee means year of making flow, and marks the dissolution of a commercial gridlock and an outburst of economic liquidity. Note that the year of Jubilee started on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is Yom Kippur, but by sounding a ram's horn. Okay? All right. So, I know that was a lot. This is very key, okay? Because we're talking about giving in this first 6 verses, talking about giving and not keeping goods from the people that are in need. Okay, so this is why when you research a lot about the land was so important for feast days, for every single thing. Everything was directed and instructed uh, perfectly when they were in the land. What they're going to be in the land, and if they would have stayed in the land, like it says in Baruch, I believe 3, if they would have just stayed in wisdom, in the foundation of wisdom, they would have been dwelling in that land forever. And isn't that the same thing as Adam and Eve? They would have dwelled in Eden if they would have just abided in the Most High's wisdom, not trying to get wisdom on their own efforts and own desires and their own ways. Right? You have to do it in the Most High's ways because His ways are not ours. Right? So Leviticus 25 will talk to you and tell you about the sabbatical year and the year of this flowing, the year of this release, this year of this jubilee. All right? And so I'm going to keep reading a little bit on the summary of it. There is actually a Sabbath of the land. So a lot of you guys observe the Shabbat or Sabbath, right? And there is an actual Sabbath for the land. And there is a year of Jubilee. So typically a Jubilee is going to be about 49 years. It's usually like 49 years. And it's going to be a 49 and a 50th year, okay? And let's see here. It says that the priestly writers place a special emphasis on the Shabbat, beginning on Genesis 2 and 2 through verses 2 through 3. You can also find this in Jubilees chapter 2 as well and chapter 50. And it says, and continuing through the Exodus into the book of Leviticus, in the list of appointed festivals and holy convocations in chapter 23, the weekly Shabbat takes first place. The Israelites are to work for 6 days, but the 7th day is to be a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. In chapter 25, even the land is granted a Sabbath rest. Every 7th year, the land is to lie fallow. No sowing of fields or pruning of vineyards is allowed in the Sabbath year. Echoing the commandment in chapter 23, it is to be a Sabbath of complete rest for the land, a Sabbath for the Most High. The Israelites, the servants, the livestock, even the wild animals are allowed to eat what the land produces of itself in that Sabbath year, as well as what they have stored from the 6th year and the promises that there will be enough food for all. So imagine not having to work the land and literally the land producing for a whole entire year. You're just able to eat what the land produces. Now you think about it. Understand how much faith that requires. And it doesn't require such a faith where it's like it's so hard to do, like, and get your mind wrapped around it. Like, if you really are locked into the Most High, there's not even really an effort. It's because you know it's going to happen. You know His word is true. You know it's going to be accomplished. So He tells you that this whole year, literally this whole Shabbat, and you're going to eat off the land, it's going to be enough for you. What do you need to even doubt? There's scriptures that I'm going to present much later, but it tells you that the daughter of the devil is doubt. The daughter of the Most High is faith. Two separate, right? And that you don't, if you doubt, it's just like in James, he says that you're I would say, I'm just going to paraphrase, it's like a ship that's being tossed to and fro, or you're tossed to and fro in the waves of the sea, being double-minded and not knowing whether or not you have faith, true faith, or you're doubting. Right? So this Sabbath year was truly, truly important, and the Most High would allow people to live off the land, whatever it produced for that Sabbath year, for that 7th year. Okay? It says the text goes on to speak of what could be called a Sabbath of Sabbaths. The year of Jubilee is set by counting off 7 Sabbaths of years, or 7 times 7 years. The 50th year, then, is to be the year of Jubilee. It is proclaimed with the blowing of the ram's horn on the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th month. So again, you guys see that these countings had to be accurate. So that way, it wasn't set. Sorry, y'all. I got to get a little bit of water. So the priest would count these things very, very, very strategic, right? And so it had to be on that 50th year to make sure that they would observe it correctly, okay? Sorry, y'all. Sheesh. All right. So it says the year of Jubilee is a time of Sabbath rest, a time of homecoming, and a time of liberation. The land is to lie fallow as it does in the Sabbath year, and then each Israelite is to return to his ancestral land and to his clan. Debts are to be forgiven. So imagine your whole debt being forgiven on this 50th year, on this year of Jubilee. It says Israelite slaves are to be set free because there were slaves within Israelites. Not everybody was a slave, right? And land is to be returned to its proper owners. In other words, if a person falls on hard times and is forced to sell his land or himself to pay off debts, the sale is not permanent. Both land and people are set free in the year of Jubilee. You can only imagine that even happening in this land, but it's not our land. It's not the Most High's promised land. Some people believe it is, but that's a whole other story. But this is not the Most High's land. The rules of this land is so different. Obviously, everywhere that you see Babylon, Babylon, Egypt, anything related to it, you'll see the same connections all together. What type of rules and commandments they have that's opposite of the Most High, and even some of them may be similar, but essentially how they run things is going to be different to the Most High. And obviously with debt, you guys see this country is literally ran off of debt. Your credit is essentially based off of debt. And you think about the word credit in itself, and it's based off of debt, it's just wild. And you can even find somewhere in Nehemiah, I think it may be chapter 8 or 9, one of those, but it talks about usury. That's the word for debt in the Bible. It's usury, and the Most High is truly against usury. And unfortunately, that's what this whole economic system is fully based off of, is usury. And so you see here in the land, every 50th year, that usury, any debt, anything was supposed to be cleansed. Everything was supposed to be cleansed and essentially reset. All right. So I want you guys to make sure you go read about that. I just wanted to present that to you guys, the year of Jubilee. Please go read it as well, Leviticus 25, and then research it for yourself. I have a few links I'll share on the story just to make sure you guys have it, and I'll post it after this study. But very essential, going back to Sirach chapter 4 and seeing that the Most High didn't even leave people in need. The Most High never wanted people to be in need, never wanted to he made sure he set everybody in their places, especially with Israel. He wanted them to help the stranger. We're going to talk about that eventually, but he wanted them to help the stranger, help the poor, help the needy, help the fatherless, help the widow, help the orphan. A lot of that stuff is still what we're supposed to do. Okay, but we'll get to that soon in the next one. I wanted to present Shepherd of Hermas, the similitudes. A lot of you guys haven't read it before. I'm going to do some studies on that, of course. This is my favorite trilogy of books. Within the Shepherd of Hermas, you have the visions, you have the commandments, and you have the similitudes. The similitudes, it basically means parables or it means visions. Very, very, very powerful similitudes. It's super powerful. And definitely study for that later. but I just wanted to read at least, let me see here, the first, let's see here, the two, okay? It's gonna talk about the land. It's gonna talk about being in a strange land, and it's gonna talk about helping the poor, okay? So similar to chapter 1, it says, he says to me, you know that you are, that you who are the servants of the Most High dwell in a strange land. For your city is far away from this one. If then, he continues, you know your city in which you are to dwell, why do you here provide lands and expensive preparations and accumulate dwellings and useless buildings? He who makes such preparations for this city cannot again return to his own. O foolish and unstable and miserable man, do you not understand that all these things belong to another and are under the power of another? For the Lord of this city will say, I do not wish you to dwell in my city, but depart from this city, because you do not obey my laws. You therefore, having fields and houses and many other things, when cast out by him, what will you do with your land and your house and other possessions which you have gathered to yourself? For the Lord of this country justly says to you, either you obey my laws or depart from my dominion. So, what is it telling you right now? The land that we are in, very strange, because it's essentially what I just read to you guys about the year of Jubilee. It tells you that land of milk and honey that the Most High had already planned and that it already has. Literally, there are rules, there are things that the Most High has for that land that you cannot have in other lands because of the sin, because of the ways that people have that are not his ways, right? So you're seeing here that in the same regard as people who do so much within a strange land, that it's not saying that you can't live, but it's saying that it's connected to Second Esdras, chapter 15. I'm going to read that very, very quick. I just want you guys to make sure, you have the understanding to understand, like if you have a house and all that right now, it's not sitting there saying that you shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? It's not saying that. I just want to make sure you guys understand what it's telling you in terms of mindset. Okay, in terms of mindset. So I'm going to read Second Esdras, or it's also called Fourth Esdras. It's talking to you about the times that we're in, coming where the sun is returning, and it's telling you how to make sure you set your mindset. Okay, so the first one is in chapter 14. Okay, so it says in verse 9, in verse 10, it says, for the world has lost its youth, and the times begin to wax old. For the world is divided into 12 parts, and 10 parts of it are already gone. So 10 parts of it were already gone by the time Esdras was receiving this. So where do you think we are now? It says, even the half of the 10th part, and there remains 2 parts after the middle of the 10. So it says, now therefore set your house in order and reprove your people. Comfort the lowly among them and instruct of them that are wise, and renounce the life that is corruptible. And let go from your mortal thoughts and cast yourself away from the burdens of man. Put off now your weak nature. Lay aside the thoughts that are most grievous to you, and hasten to depart from these times. Because yet worse evils than those which you have seen will happen and be done eventually. For see how much the world will be weaker through age, so much the more will evils increase on those who dwell therein. For the truth will withdraw itself further off, and falsehood will be hard at hand, and now the evil of which you saw in the vision hastens to come. So right there, it's already telling you, literally the things of this world, when people say I'm not of this world, I don't think people really understand what this whole process is all about. We are truly trying to develop and growing into sanctification of in the spirit, to not really be of this world. Why do you think the Most High gave Israelites manna? He was giving them the food laws. He was giving them these things that are not of the world in order for them to fully be prepared to transform into that spiritual being that the Most High wants us to be. So you see that even Ezra, he was taken up without death. Enoch was taken up without death. Baruch was actually taken up without death. Uh, Maybe John, supposedly, he may have just been allowed to live without dying, and he still may be here with that. Those are, little things you can look into, but those people essentially got it. When you read about their life, they got it. Like they understood the separation that they needed, and you'll see how they separated from man multiple times, and they essentially got their own, their own thrones in the heavens. Enoch is a little bit more special because of the fact that he was born for righteousness. He was a scribe of righteousness, but he was essentially like one of the more perfect ones in righteousness. So essentially, like when you think about righteousness and the path of righteousness, he was one of the main ones who helped establish it to where we see it today, right? But he received that from the Father, and the Son is prevalent in that book. It's very debated here and there, but the Son is very much alive and shown in that book. But that's why I'm going to make sure I do a study on the book of Enoch eventually. But just for you guys to understand, these people got it. Like their path of righteousness got it. So even the ones that didn't get taken up without death, they still got it. You see Abraham, he had to be here, right? And if he would have got taken up, a lot wouldn't have happened. So everybody has their roles and their parts. Very powerful men, Abraham, Jacob, all these patriarchs, all these, even women like Judith. You got Ruth, you got all these people that show the character of the Most High, that understood the path of righteousness. So what I've read from 2nd Ezra chapter 14, renewing your mind, making sure you're not thinking about the things that are like that can corrupt you. These are things that you're going to find that are in the foundations: fear, wisdom, and righteousness. All of that is to help you grow into not being a person of this world, worldly. What does it say in John? It says the lust of all the things in this life is of this world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Right? So all these things that he told Ezra not to do, or to set his house in order, is to combat that. Right? So going back to, we're going to go to chapter 15. It's telling you here, I'm sorry, chapter 16 in 2nd Ezra. It's going to tell you that in verse 40, it says, "O my people, hear my word. Make you ready for the battle, and in those calamities be even as pilgrims on earth. So he that sells, let him be as he that flees away. He that buys, as one that will lose. He that occupies merchandise, as he that has no profit by it. And he that builds, as he that will not dwell therein. He that sows, as if he should not reap. So also he that prunes, as he that will not gather the grapes. Those who marry, as those who will get no children. And those who do not marry, as the widowed. Because of this, those who labor in vain, for strangers will reap their fruits and plunder their goods and overthrow their houses, etc., etc." So it's a very good read for you guys, obviously. But what are we saying? The things of this world is obviously already passing away. It already been passing away. But if you hold so fast, if you covet career so much, if you covet your possessions so much, then you're not able to really see and understand and really give your understanding and your faith and your trust in El Shaddai and Yashaddai, the one who is able to give you everything, more than what you can even think of, and what you may think you need. He knows exactly what you need. You can't actually release that that control, right? Even for me, I had a great experience with that. You know how the Israelites were taken out of Egypt, right? Taken out of Egypt, and you read in the book of Jasher, the way that they did work for their food. They worked for their living, right? And they didn't have, like, they were put in bonds where it was like, very, very hard labor, things like that, but it was like a regular life for them. It was like a do your work, go home, make sure you feed your family, do, et cetera, right? So when you see them complaining in the regular canon that they wanted to go back to that because it was quote unquote secure, it was kind of secure for them. Like they knew they could work, they knew that their money would get there, and even though it was tough, they knew they could provide for their families. But when they were in the desert, they were going on this journey to this land of milk and honey. It required faith, it required wisdom, it required fear, it required righteousness, it required for them to obey. It required things that they weren't. They were learning how to do, that the Most High was separating themselves. And on top of that, they had already put themselves in a yoke of bondage through sacrifices, through things that they were already learning in Egypt, to where in Isaiah you will find in the first chapter, he says, I didn't even require you guys to do that. I didn't require you guys to do such things, but because you went into it, it is required because of the fact that you've already put that yoke of bondage on you. Now you have to do, if you're going to follow the laws, if you follow the fullness of the commandment, these ones that you think that you're just going to look over, I'm going to show you how deeply and how perfect you need to be, right? I think that's really some understanding a lot of people don't have when it comes down to the Father, like the ultimate being. Like, I mean, he's not even the ultimate being, but he is the ultimate. He is the top. He is, you can't even put like true words, even if you say he's a father, like he's everything. Like he's like, you can't just go before him and think that you're getting ready to present yourself without having being changed and having being perfect, unspotted, right? So these things were required when it's all said and done. And so being able to, going back to the shepherd of Hermas, the similitude, when it's telling you that you should not hang on to your possessions and things like that, he essentially did that with Israel and brought them out of Egypt. And even in my own experience, the Most High had my whole family start over in a whole new state. Now, we were already uncomfortable because it was a lot of things going on in that moment, and we didn't know what was going on, and he was like, it's time to move. And now if we would have got comfortable, right, if I would have been able to do what my heart was on at that time, if I would have been able to have my career the way I thought it was, my wife, if we would have been able to have these things that we wanted, it wasn't out of spite, of course, but it would have been real uncomfortable to move someone comfortable. You guys know what I'm saying? It's very tough to move someone if you have everything established and be like, okay, you got to go start over. That's very tough for like just a normal person to do. That's why I think there was one story when Yahusha was asking that rich man, and said, like, the rich man was like, I want to follow you. And Yahusha said, like, let all of that go then. In order for you to follow me, you got to leave everything. And the dude said, everything? Are you sure? He said, everything that I done worked for, everything that I'm comfortable with, you want me to leave this? And he couldn't do it, right? So that's the craziest part. When you go back, we're going to read it again. It's telling you that the land that we're in is strange. It's a strange land. It doesn't abide by the Most High's ways, right? So again, going back to the similitude chapter 1, it says either you obey the laws of that country or you don't. And if they want you to leave, they will kick you out. All right? Verse 7, it says, or verse 6, it says, for the Lord of this country justly says to you, either you obey my laws or depart from my dominion. What then do you intend to do, having a law in your own city, on account of your lands and the rest of your possessions? You will altogether deny your own law and walk according to the law of this city. Because these people in this specific example, because they don't want to lose their things, they're going to abide by the laws of that city, even if it's against the Most High. It says, see lest it be to your hurt to deny your law, for if you will desire to return to your city, you will not be able to be received, because you have denied the law of your city, but will be excluded from it. Have a care, therefore, as one living in a foreign land, make no further preparations for yourselves than such merely as to be sufficient, and be ready when the master of the city will come to cast you out for disobeying his law, and to leave his city and to depart to your own, and to obey your own law, without having been exposed to annoyance, but in great joy. So being sufficient. Moving from California all the way to out here in the East Coast, I mean, man, like it's so different, y'all. Like y'all, a lot of y'all who have it well for yourselves, don't understand the ways that others live when they don't have the luxuries, and they don't even want the luxuries. They don't want it. Like, we're talking about feeding the poor right now, right? You're talking about the poor and the needy just want something to be sufficient. They just want something in their stomach. Let's just say if someone is homeless, or someone hasn't had food all day, they just want something in their system because they're hungry. They just want something sufficient. But when you think about it, those who haven't hungered before, who haven't had a moment where they haven't struggled, even if it's a certain struggle, a lot of you guys know what a struggle is. When you don't have anything in your account, yet you're working and you're just trying to figure it out, and you're waiting for that next paycheck. You know what I'm talking about? And doing that for a while, but you're sufficient. The Most High is always sufficient. He's always covered you, and you have no worries. You just got to make sure you do your part, right? We're talking about something like that. I'm seeing these people out here. I mean, it's a total different lifestyle. They know how to fix their own cars, because one guy told me that I work in a place where people work on their cars and stuff like that, and he's like, man, like, when you don't have enough money to get it fixed by someone else, you learn how to fix it yourself. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's to learn from how to fix your own car, how to do your own work in your own house and things like that from a kid up, and you're passing that information down to your own kids and et cetera, et cetera. That's sufficient, right? A lot of people will not learn how to be sufficient because they've never had to not have anything. They've always been able to pay for someone to fix this and someone to fix that, or to get this done and get that. Why do you guys think that the cars are more electric more than anything? Because they want you to go to the dealership. They want you to spend money so that they can fix your vehicle. It's all by design, y'all. So same thing that we're seeing here in the similitude 1, the laws of this strange land. If they kick you out, you should be ready to know it's all good because I got the Most High. I know what He's going to give me regardless. What He knows we stand in need of. But the ones that are keeping their dwellings here and putting their everything into it and their heart and soul into it is going to be real tough, man. It says, verse 9, have a care, then, you who serve the Most High, and have Him in your heart, that you work the works of the Most High, remembering His commandments and promises which He promised, and believe that He will bring them to pass if His commandments are observed. Instead of lands, therefore, buy afflicted souls, according as each one is able, and to visit widows and orphans, and do not overlook them. This is so important because we're about to hit that in a few. And spend your wealth and all your preparations which you receive from the Most High on such lands and houses. For to this end the Master made you rich, that you might perform these services to Him. And it is much better to purchase such lands and possessions and houses as you will find in your own city when you come to reside in it. This is a noble and sacred expenditure, attended neither with sorrow nor fear, but with joy. Do not practice the expenditure of the heathen, for it is injurious to you who are the servants of the Most High. But practice an expenditure of your own, in which you can rejoice, and do not corrupt nor touch what is another's, nor covet it, for it is an evil thing to covet the goods of another man, but work your own work, and you will be saved. So we're going to kind of come back to this in a few. We get to the next part. But notice that there's a portion where it says for those who have riches, what you can do. And also, even if you're in your own regard, your own as an individual, to set an expenditure or try to have a plan with what you can do for the widow, for the orphan, for those who are in need. Okay? So again, we're going to come back to that. So again, I want to make sure I read chapter 2 about the rich and the poor. Okay. So I actually thought this was going to be short. It's every time I think something's going to be short, it's always more heat that's in it than I realize. So I'll probably got another hour on. All right, verse similar to chapter 2. So we're still focused on feeding the needy. All right. It says, as I was walking in the field and observing an elm and vine. I'm not going to read the part that is talking about the elm and the vine and the two trees and things like that. I'm going to read just the explanation of the similitude. Okay, so I'm going to go to verse 7. It says, this similitude, therefore, is for the service of the Most High, for the poor man and for the rich. How so, Lord? I said, explain the matter to me. Listen, he said, the rich man has much wealth, but is poor in matters relating to the Most High, because he is distracted about his riches. And he offers very few confessions and intercessions to the Most High, and those which he offers are small and weak and have no power above. But when the rich man refreshes the poor and assists him in his necessities, believing that what he does to the poor man will be able to find its reward with the Most High, because the poor man is rich in intercession and confession, and his intercession has great power with the Most High, then the rich man helps the poor in all things without hesitation. So, to recap on what that means, it's saying that when the rich man understands that the rewards of his doings are with the Most High, that he's not distracted on the world. He's not distracted on putting his riches into the world. He's more so focused and consumed with what he can do with his riches by what the Most High commands for those who are rich to be able to do so. And that is to give. And that's to, make more and be able to give to others. And so it says by the poor man, that the poor man's intercession and confession, because of them giving praise and thanks to the Most High, because they were allowed to be given things by the rich man, they're making intercession and great praise and thankful, to the Most High about that person who's rich. So essentially, it's going to be like a inverse type of relationship. Okay, so it's gonna continue to talk about what all this means as well. Verse 10, it says, and the poor man, being helped by the rich, intercedes for him, giving thanks to the Most High for him who bestows gifts on him. And he still continues to interest himself zealously for the poor man, that his wants may be constantly supplied. For he knows that the intercession of the poor man is acceptable and influential with the Most High. Both the rich man and the poor man accordingly accomplish their work. So you see, they're praying for each other. Where do you hear this at? They're praying for each other, and they're giving towards one another. Verse 12, the poor man makes intercession a work in which he is rich, which he received from the Most High, and with which he recompenses the master who helps him. And the rich man in like manner unhesitatingly bestows on the poor man the riches which he received from the Most High. And this is a great work and acceptable before the Most High, because he understands the object of his wealth and has given to the poor of the gifts of the Most High, and rightly discharged his service to him. Among men, however, the elm does not appear to produce fruit, and does not know nor understand that if a drought comes, the elm which contains water nourishes the vine. So it basically is telling you, like I said, I didn't read the beginning of it, but it's going to talk about the elm and the vine. Okay, so it's going to tell you a little bit more about why the water is contained in this and that and this and that. Okay, so I always try to leave off something so that way you guys can be inspired to go read it for yourself. But it says in verse 17, blessed are they who have riches, and who understand that they are from the Most High. For they who are of that mind will be able to do something good. Okay? So again, when we read earlier with Job, we see exactly that, how rich he was, how giving he was, and how cheerful he was with it. Okay? And again, y'all, we are still within the verses 1 through 6 of Sirach chapter 4. It's a lot of heat in here. To add to that, we got Matthew chapter 25, and we have verse 40 through 45. If my computer, my laptop, we'll get to it. Of course, my internet somehow doesn't want to work. But this is the chapter where it says, where the Mashiach says, however you treated others is how you treated him. However you gave to others is how you gave to him. So he's leaving no room to just do whatever you want to do to people and treat them however you want to. He's essentially showing you that there is no room for that. There's no room to treat others in a way that, in Sirach chapter 4, where you're angering the needy. You're keeping your giving away from them. You're holding back from giving to others because you just want to covet whatever you want to covet, when you didn't even, you were given that by him in the first place. So he's not leaving any room for any of that. And I think that's the whole entire portion of understanding sanctification and growing in his spirit, because when you really are walking in his spirit truly, in spirit and in truth, these are things that are so easy for you to just lock in on that you don't even think twice about it. The common man that does not have the spirit in them will think twice on these things because they are living in the flesh. They're not living in the spirit. Like, think about it. There's no room for you to hold your hand away from giving to the poor or to the needy at all. There's no room for it at all. The Most High literally makes no room for you to do anything in a sinful way. If you follow his word, follow these commandments. The commandments that he gave Israel, and even before Israel, are all into the renewed covenant. It's not really a New Testament, it's a renewed covenant. So the things that were in the past are still here. That's why the Mashiach says, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it, so I can show you what I had already gave everybody else in the past, the path of righteousness. I'm going to show you really how to live it out in your flesh. I'm going to show you that it's attainable. And not only that, I'm going to make sure I defeat death for you so that I can show you that you have the victory regardless. And that the only person that you can truly blame is yourself. Because that's going to be on your judgment, is to blame yourself, not him, for you falling into temptation, for you falling to the sins of this world, because he gave us his power. For this generation that is striving to the end, he gave us the ultimate power that it says even the prophets have tried to look into. Even the angels were looking into it. And they're like, what is this freedom? What is this power? What is this joy? What is this celebration? What is this like walking in the spirit thing that it seemed like it wasn't there before? It was just only with the prophets, or it was only with certain people, and now it's free for people to really understand and gain these things and walk in his word, like he says. What is this? You know what I'm saying? So when you're thinking about giving, this is what it's talking about. Like, another portion of it. How you treat others is how you treat him. Love your neighbor as yourself. So how you treat others, you treat him, and essentially yourself, whom he literally made you. It's like a double disrespect if you're doing it in evil. You know, and imagine what he's writing down as far as sins if we treat others wrong and we don't help them. You help your own children, and a lot of people, especially in this world, as evil as it's getting, they don't even want to help their children. I saw one video where this woman she wanted to disown her own child because she couldn't party anymore, or she couldn't go to the club or something like that. and she really didn't want. I think the dad-in-law was or the dad was recording her saying all these things, and she was dead serious. Like she did not want her child because she had the responsibility now to take care of her child, and she couldn't do what she wanted to do. Like this is the times that we're living in. This is the times that we're living in. Like, that's a real video. She was dead serious. It wasn't like for play. Cast her own child out. That's the same connection that you'll see somewhere in the Word. I think it's maybe in First Kings or so. But I don't know if you guys remember the two women. I think one of the women ended up like eating her child or something like that because she was hungry or something like that. She didn't care. She didn't care. It was something of that nature. I think some of you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And then the last point I wanted to touch on this for the verses to finish out verse 1 through 6. Fourth Maccabees. I absolutely love that book. If you've been on this page already, you know I love that book with all my heart. I'm probably one of the main people, if only, that tries to share as much scriptures from there or just tell you to read it, because it's absolutely powerful. But in that book, you will find a portion on it that talks about brotherly love. Okay? Brotherly love, and it's very powerful. In this book, basically, the author is trying to describe and show the reader that wise reasoning is powerful. It's powerful to where you're able to control your passions, control the things that are the temptations by wise reasoning. And he goes very in detail from first chapter to the end. Okay. And so basically he gives you this story also about these people. There's going to be 7 people involved, or maybe more people, but it's 8 people involved, where you have Elijah, the high priest. He's in there, and then it's like 7 brothers or 6 brothers, something like that. It's 6 or 7 brothers, and then the mother. Okay, so Antiochus Epiphanes is the king in this book, and he's trying to force them to eat pork. Okay, he's trying to the backside of it, the foundational understanding of it is that he's trying to get them to disobey the commandments. And he's trying to get them to eat pork, and they will not. And he's literally torturing them, trying to make sure and trying to get them to submit to him and to just eating just a little bit of flesh of the pork. And you'll see, like no other, the details of the torturing. Twisting of the knees, like cutting this and cutting that, like torture, like literal torture. And you'll see the testimony of these people who are being tortured and how strong they are. And it's all because of the word of the Most High, that they are walking in strength and truly walking in spirit and truth. So it gets to these brothers where Antiochus Epiphanes tortures them from the oldest to the youngest. And he thinks that by doing that the youngest is going to fold, and the youngest is like, I'm the strongest one out of all of them. That's what I love about this story too. But again, going back to our Sirach verses, chapter 4, verses 1 through 6, talking about giving to the poor, what I wanted to touch on in 4th Maccabees is chapter 13, and it talks about brotherly love. Okay? And I'm gonna read it, and I'm gonna just kind of summarize why it's important to attach it to these scriptures. So it says, if then the 7 brothers, despise trouble, even to death, it is confessed on all sides that righteous reasoning is absolute master over the passions. For just as if they had they as slaves to the passions eaten of the unholy, we should have said that they had been conquered. Now it is not so, but by the means of reasoning, which is praised by the Most High, they mastered their passions. And it is impossible to overlook the leadership of reflection, for it gained the victory over passions and troubles. How then can we avoid, according to these men, mastery of passion through right reasoning, since they did not draw back from the pains of the fire? For just as by means of towers, threatening waves, I'm sorry, for just as by means of towers projecting in front of harbors, men break the threatening waves, and therefore assure a still course to vessels entering port. It says, so that the seven-towered right reasoning of the young men, securing the harbor of religion, conquered the intemperance of passion. So it's just giving you a little bit more imagery of how strong their reasoning was. Okay? So now it's going to talk about the brotherly love. It says, for having arranged a holy choir of piety. So piety and being able to be prudent, knowing also the dangers and watching out for those things, and striving to the end, having virtue. It says they encourage one another, saying, brothers, may we die brotherly for the law, for the Torah, for his instruction. Let us imitate the three young men in Assyria who despised the equally afflicting furnace. So we know that's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let us not be cowards in the manifestation of piety. And one said, courage, brother. And another said, nobly endure. And another says, remember of what stock you are, and by the hand of our father Isaac, who endured to be slain for the sake of piety. So I want to make sure, just for our study purposes, you guys know I like defining words. And so again, you guys, please, you're going to have to go read it on yourself. Read it for yourself. The detail that you'll see, my laptop is loading. The detail that you'll see when it came down to the brothers enduring the affliction that they were given, and they were tortured again. Okay. Let me see here. So you see that they're literally shouting things out to each other, encouraging each one that's in the trial. That's each one that is being tortured, each one that's getting ready to be tortured, or in the midst of torturing, that they're saying, lock in, like endure, nobly, courage, brother. They're saying these things to each other. They're saying beautiful things to each other to encourage them to continue to fight. All right. Let's see here, verse 13, and it says, and one and all looking on each other, serene and confident, let us sacrifice with all our heart, all our souls to the Most High who gave them, and employ our bodies for the keeping of the Torah. Let us not fear him who thinks he kills, so don't fear men. For great is the trial of soul and danger of continuous torment laid up for those who transgress the commandment of the Most High. Let us therefore arm ourselves in the self-control which is divine reasoning. If we suffer like this, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob will receive us, and all the fathers who commend us. And as each one of these brothers was hauled away, the rest exclaimed, do not disgrace us, O brother, nor falsify those who die before you. Now you are not ignorant of the charm of brotherhood, which the divine and all-wise providence has imparted through fathers to children, and has engendered through the mother's womb, in which these brothers, having remained in equal time and having been formed for the same period, let's just say 9 months, and been increased by the same blood, and having been perfected through the same principle of life, and having been brought out at equal intervals, and having sucked the milk from the same springs, their brotherly souls are reared up lovingly together, and increase all the more powerfully by reason of this simultaneously rearing, and by daily companionship, and by other education and exercise in the Torah of the Most High. Brotherly love being so sympathetically constituted, the 7 brothers had a more sympathetic mutual harmony. For being educated in the same Torah and practicing the same virtues and reared up in a just course of life, they increased this harmony with each other. For a like zeal for what is right and honorable increased their fellow feeling toward each other. For it, acting along with religion, made their brotherly feeling more desirable to them. And yet, although nature and companionship and virtuous morals increased their brotherly love, those who were left endured to behold their brothers, who were mistreated for their religion and tortured even to death. So, going back to the understanding of giving, right, and seeing how Job gave with a cheerful heart, with all his riches, We read the other material. When it comes down to the brotherly love portion of not holding back when giving, you have to be, when it says iron sharpens iron, you do have to be around those who hold the same values, and not hold the same values in a general sense, where a lot of you guys have come out of churches, right? And essentially, when you get to this Torah community, a lot of people always shame the churches. They always shame, where they came from, and the doctrine and all that. But at the same time, those same people, even though some of their works obviously may be in vain, and that's up until the judge to be able to judge whether those works are in vain, at least they have a structure in a way where they'll give to others. They'll go out and go feed the poor or help the youth, etc., etc. At least there is a structure in place. When you get to this Torah community, there's so much trash talking church, and of course you got the whole word churchianity. I never even heard of that word till I got here. But you have so much of that, but at the end of the day, there is no true brotherly love in being able to say, okay, iron sharpens iron. Let's try to figure out what we can do to help others. There's a way for you guys to do that. Even if you got your own little, group or whatever the case is, you guys can talk about that. Even if you live in different areas, you guys can have a discussion about, what can you do in your own area to do a little bit better with that. And not also just show everybody that you're doing it. You don't have to do that. It's up until you. It's between you and the Most High and your close brothers and sisters that you gave to this person or gave to that person, like within discretion of sharing those details. But so many people want to just put stuff online so they can be seen a certain way. That's not the way that you need to do that, right? But it's still in the same essence. The brotherly love portion that we just read in 4th Maccabees, it shows you how strong their brotherly love was, even though they were siblings. But it's the fact that they were raised in the Torah. They understood the perseverance that they needed in order to endure the struggles and endure the pains, endure the hardship until the very end. And that's by doing the things that the Most High wants us to do. So when you're reading something like Sirach chapter 4 and 1 through 6, and he's telling you, don't hold back your hand. Don't anger someone when they're in need and they're afflicted. Like, these are so important. He's taking every little detail into account. I don't know if you guys ever read and saw that I posted that before, but Revelation of Zephaniah. Revelation of Zephaniah, it also says that when the angel had opened up his scroll, Zephaniah's scroll, the angel was reading all these little details about things that was a shortcoming. The shortcoming. So he said, if he didn't visit a widow or an orphan or something like that, that was written down on his scroll as a shortcoming. Shortcoming is a bad thing. When he didn't do something, this and that, if he looked away from this person, these shortcomings were written on his scroll. And when he heard it, he fell down, and all he could do was ask for mercy. Because that's all we should be doing every single day, is really asking the Most High for mercy and grace, because you don't know what you did wrong that you may have overlooked. And ask the Most High for instruction on what you could do better to raise your awareness of things that he's asked us to do in order for us to walk truly in spirit and truth. But Zephaniah literally broke down and asked for mercy. Right? So, same thing. There's so much in this community, obviously, sharing this stuff online. You guys got to take yourself out of this community so heavy and being online all the time, and really apply this stuff into your real world. Apply these things into your real world, not just online and sharing stuff and making people think that you're abiding by his commandments and doing all these things. It's for show. At the end of the day, the real judgment is sitting right there in front of your face. It's sitting right there in front of your face. You do not know that if you deny his word for the last time, it might be your end. The word says that he gives us more life for those who follow his word. So why wouldn't you just follow his word and try to see what else that he has for us to be able to give to others? I mean, just with this simple stuff, 1 through 6. And you're not going to find someone like Job who's rich, who's doing these things in the testament of Job, how cheerful he was to give. You guys see celebrities and things like that. Oh, it's always a charity. It's always charity. They always look good giving. They always look good giving. You have no idea who these people really are. And a lot of times you can see the fruits of who they are by the symbolism, by the people that they are around, the things that they do outside of all the things that they do for others. But they think that their good works and helping and just spending money for a company to take care of their charity deeds is going to save them, and they're going to find out, unfortunately. Okay. But yeah, if you missed all that for the verses 1 through 6, I will obviously post all this stuff. But we definitely got to move on to the next part. All right. So this one isn't going to be too much that I'm going to expand on this part, because like I told you guys, I'm not rushing with any studies, that I put out, of course, but I do have studies lined up for eventual purposes, of course. So Book of Enoch is definitely going to be one of those. I'm very excited for that one, and Isaiah and all that cool stuff like that. But you guys have all the reason more, obviously, to study, right? So Sirach chapter 4, I'm going to read verses 8 through 9. It says, "Incline your ear to a poor man, and answer him with peaceful words and humility. Deliver him who is wronged from the hand of him that wrongs him. Do not be faint-hearted in giving judgment." Okay, so this one real quick. My laptop is just tripping out, y'all. I apologize. I wanted to just encourage you guys to try to read Enoch chapter 85 through 90. Anytime I think about those chapters, I'm always thinking about Yahuwah of the sheep, and it tells you it's Enoch's dream, very super detailed, and it's connected to the parables of the Mashiach when he was talking about the separation of the wheats and the tares and the cattle and things of that nature. You'll see very similar verbiage in there, but the detail in that dream is so interesting that it's going throughout history, and then towards the end in chapter 90, you notice how Yahuwah the sheep, he comes back, or he comes to collect his sheep, and really he also destroys many of the shepherds that were falsely spreading out falsely basically giving information to the sheep and blinding them and creating blind sheep. He also destroys them and judges them. But you also see the same verbiage in Isaiah. Okay, you see the same verbiage in Isaiah chapter 59. And I definitely encourage you guys to try to read Isaiah and Enoch, right? That's one of the things I'm going to do later on, is have like a study that's going to compare and contrast and connect these different connections. But because my laptop is acting funny, I'm not going to be able to just read a little bit of Isaiah 59, but the connection with Sirach chapter 4 is that the Most High doesn't play games with his sheep. He knows who are his, and he knows that those who are truly striving for him, that he's going to always be a help to them. And so he's always going to deliver those who are wrong, even though in that moment it may not seem like he's like the person who did you wrong is escaping. He says vengeance is his. And a lot of times too, a lot of people always want punishment for the other person without looking at themselves first. Right? You have to be able to look and look at yourself to see what you could do better, but also pray for the person, that may be doing you wrong. But at the end of the day, also the Most High says vengeance is his. All right? And it says, do not be faint-hearted in giving him judgment for those who have been wronged. Okay? All right, so that was a quick one. Let's go to verse 10 now. So verse 10 is obviously so packed. All right. Let me try to pull something up here. All right, so we're going to read all these various scriptures here. And I'm going to read, that's messed up. Why my laptop started messing up? This is probably the biggest portion of this whole study. Give me a second, y'all. If y'all want to grab a snack or something real quick, that would be great. That is messed up. My laptop never usually messes up, but of course, y'all know, some of you guys know how much I've been struggling to even get these studies out right now. This is not by accident, so I appreciate y'all for being patient. All right, so what I'm going to do, so got my mom-in-law's Bible right here actually, so that's good. So I'm going to read verse 10 and from Sirach chapter 4, all right? So it says, be as a father to the fatherless, and like a husband to their mother. So you will be as a son of the Most High, and he will love you more than your mother does. Be as a father to the fatherless. Okay? So there is a psalm that says Yah is a lover of the fatherless. He is a father to the fatherless. Okay? So in James chapter 1, all right, I gotta do this old school way. No, I'm just kidding. This is the best way without the internet. James chapter 1, okay? This is where, when I found this scripture a long time ago, anytime I thought about religion, I would always think about this scripture, okay? So it says, it's James chapter 1, verse 27. It says, pure and undefiled religion before the Most High, the Father, is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and keep oneself unstained from the world. Okay? Keep oneself unstained from the world. So you do see that you have the orphans and the widows listed here, right? And then in Sirach chapter 4, which we just read, it says, be as a father to the fatherless and like a husband to their mother. And so you will be as a son of the Most High, and he will love you more than your mother does. All right? So the Most High loves the orphans. He loves the strangers. He loves the fatherless. He loves them. Truly, truly loves them. And so this portion of this study is going to show you how we already saw that we're supposed to feed the poor. Feed and help the poor. Do not hold your hand away from them. That never said whether they were Israelite, stranger, anything. It was anyone who was in need. Okay? We also saw that Mashiach says, however you treat others, you've treated me. If you helped them, you've helped me. If you didn't help them, you didn't help me. We see these things, right? We saw the rich and the poor. We saw how the rich is supposed to help the poor, and the poor is helping the rich, and their intercessory prayers, all these beautiful things. Okay, so this is going to be some more connections to adding to our character and understanding who the Most High is and what he loves in order for us to love the same things. So Isaiah chapter 58. So this one is talking about the fasting. Okay, this is one of the biggest portions about fasting. So it says, verse 1, it says, cry out loudly, don't hold back, raise your voice like a ram's horn. Tell my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day and delight to know my ways, like a nation that does what is right and does not abandon the justice of the Most High. They ask me for righteous judgments, and they delight in the nearness of me. Why have we fasted, but you have not seen? They're asking. We have denied ourselves, but you haven't noticed. Look, And this is the Most High replying. Look, you do as you please on the day of your fast, and oppress all your workers. You fast with contention and strife to strike viciously with your fist. You cannot fast as you do today, hoping to make your voice heard on high. Will the fast I choose be like this? So he's going to show you, is he's telling you to fast like this? For a person to deny themselves, to bow their head like a reed, to spread out sackcloth and ashes. He said, will you call this a fast and a day acceptable to the Most High? So think for a minute, like when you guys started learning about fasting, some of us, I would say, especially in the church, it was always like afflicting yourself, which it's still a part of a certain type of fast, which I'm going to bring up more about that during the spiritual warfare, weapons of warfare series. But he's trying to show a difference in how the fasting was always looked at as like, if you needed something, you got to fast. Like if you want the Most High to bless you with something, it was always like in a need type of thing. If you're going through something, struggling, I got to fast immediately because I don't have this amount of finances, or I don't have this and that, right? So it was always something related to that. But he's saying that even with you trying to do that, what really did I ask you to do? What is the fast that I truly chose? So he says, verse 6, isn't this the fast I choose and I chose, to break the chains of wickedness? So what James said in verse 27, he said, be unspotted from the world. That's the same thing as breaking the chains of wickedness. To untie the ropes of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, and to tear off every yoke. Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, to bring the poor and homeless into your house? Now, that part, of course, you got to be careful with that. So everybody, like back in the day, or what I see also in the East, depending on if it's in the country or not, a lot of people will invite someone to their home, especially if they're kind of homeless or they need help, especially if they're in their immediate family and they're not doing so well. They'll let them, sleep on the couch and feed them and try to take care of them as much as possible, but they still got to get up and do good for themselves, So, where I'm from, obviously California, you just don't do that type of stuff. You don't invite people to your home. Obviously, if they're poor or something like that, it's just really not a thing to do, and especially nowadays, it's so tough, But I would essentially say that back in these times, when you read the Testament of Job and you see how giving he was, essentially he would have a spot for them. He would have some type of spot for them to lay their head, visitors, to be able to come in. And also when you read about the disciples, when the Mashiach sent them out to go do the works that he wanted them to do, he also told them if someone doesn't receive them in their household, to dust your feet off, and it's going to be worse for them because they didn't accept you. Then it's going to be worse for them than Sodom and Gomorrah. But interestingly enough, when you go read about the book of Jasher, about Sodom and Gomorrah, when you read how evil those people were in Sodom and Gomorrah, you guys will see exactly why the Mashiach would mention that. Because a lot of times Sodom and Gomorrah is only thought about the homosexuality and things like that. But in Jasher, it gives you more detail. It tells you when a visitor would come by, how disrespectful they would be. They would either try to take all their stuff. A lot of people who came in was probably not coming out alive. Or if they came out alive, they would literally leave with nothing. That's how bad that city was. They deserve everything they got, for sure. But again, going back to verse 7, bringing the poor and homeless into your house was a noble thing to do. Okay. So again, let's continue. It says to clothe the naked when you see him, and to not ignore your own flesh and blood. Then your light will appear like the dawn, and your recovery will come quickly. Your righteousness will go before you, and the Most High's glory will be your rear guard. At that time when you call, the Most High will answer. When you cry out, he will say, here I am. If you get rid of the yoke among you, and the finger pointing, and the malicious speaking, if you offer yourself to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted one. Then your light will shine in the darkness, and your night will be like noonday. So essentially, when you're reading this, also, because that's pretty much what I'm going to finish reading up on that one, Isaiah 58. A lot of these people were fasting, and their hearts were still messed up. They were fasting and crying out to the Most High for and looking into His ways, but their character was trash. We have to understand the Most High is reading our hearts constantly. There is never a time His eyes are not on our hearts. There's a scripture somewhere, and I can't look it up because my laptop's acting funny, but it says His eyes are like the eyes of the sun, and He's looking deeply into your heart. He's looking to see if He can find His character in there. And when He doesn't, He's trying to discipline you so you can actually find His character, and put more of His character in you. We can't sit here and say we got it all together. A lot of us speak rashly. A lot of us do so many things that we're like looking over, and that is a part of the flesh more so than it is part of the spirit. And we have to really be careful with that, because He's showing you He's not even going to listen to anything that you're asking Him if that's part of you is all messed up. So this was a part of what He was talking about in Isaiah 58. So again, going back to Sirach 4, He's saying in chapter 10 that be as a father to the fatherless, and like a husband to their mother, so you will be as a son of the Most High, and He will love you more than your mother does. Okay, so we're going to read Exodus chapter 22. Exodus chapter 22. And that's going to be verse 21 through 27. So in this Bible that I have is saying the subtitle is Laws Protecting the Vulnerable. Verse 21, it says, you must not exploit a resident alien or oppress him, since you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. I'm going to sit right there and let that, I'm going to let 5 seconds pass of silence. So you can't disrespect a Gentile. So when you look at the root words of what Gentile means, you might find something interesting, because sometimes you will actually see that Gentile is applied to Israel. But obviously we understand that there's differences in certain types of Gentiles, etc., etc. But just from the foundational understanding of what we just read, verse 21, you must not exploit an alien or oppress him, since you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. Interesting. So is there any room to sit there and keep trying to call out white people, Israel? Why are you hating so hard? Why? Why? Why do you hate so much? Where is, if the Most High says that He hates Esau, you are not the Most High. Do you understand why Esau is hating, or is hated? Because Esau disobeyed His word, not your word. The way that the Most High hates and loves and things like that is beyond our fleshly ways. That's why He says His ways are not your ways. That's why Paul was talking about Corinthians, how like he was like, how like do you wrap your mind around like all of this, because it's like the mind of Christ, the mind of the Son that was given to Him by His own Father, is like we're still trying to grasp all these things, and we're only in our sinful flesh, trying to put on His Spirit fully. So the things that are in the Word, when He has emotions about something and all this and that, it's so much more than what we try to put labels on and boxes on. That's why the Hebrew language is so beautiful in itself, that Sirach also tells you that there's things that we can't explain in other languages that you can explain in Hebrew language, because you got the etymology. You have so much breakdown. You have masculine and feminine verbs and nouns and etc. adjectives. You got so much you can put together that even when you read this word, you're reading it living. You can imagine it. You're supposed to imagine it. You're supposed to breathe it. You're supposed to put yourself into it. You're supposed to use your senses. So even through the English, you're supposed to apply the Hebraic mindset into what you read and what you're absorbing. So this very first verse, I mean, if you really follow the Most High, if you're really saying you love Him, you immediately got to clean it up. Do not exploit a resident alien or oppress him, since you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. There's no room for it. But let's continue. You must not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. If you do mistreat them, they will no doubt cry to me, and I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and then your wives will be widows, and your children fatherless. This is Exodus chapter 21. Chapter 22, verse 23. Wait. What? Oh, I'm sorry. That was verse 24. So 25. So we're reading up until 27. If you lend silver, money, a helping hand to my people, to the poor person, it says, if you lend silver to my people, to the poor person among you, you must not be like a creditor to him. You must not charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as collateral, return it to him before sunset, for it is his only covering. It is the clothing for his body. What will he sleep in? And if he cries out to me, I will listen, because I am gracious. Y'all, like we always say, we follow the commandments, and you gotta find the deeper understanding in His Word, y'all, within His commandments. This is obviously easily applied. And we're reading Sirach chapter 4, talking about helping the fatherless. Because He hears their cries when you do not help them if you had a chance to do so. Now, essentially, I am a product of, I know my dad. He wasn't around a lot when I was a kid. So that's why I grew up as with a single mother. And so essentially, I'm labeled as fatherless. There are many men, like in my men's group, a lot of us didn't grow up with our dads or had issues with our dads. We're essentially fatherless, right? Even if, maybe some of us got better relationships with them later on. But I would say, as far as my people are concerned, you have the biggest portion of black men, as they call us, fatherless, right? And essentially, even being out on the East Coast, I mean, it's crazy the racism, is so projected, because, I mean, I've met all types of people out here, and I haven't not one time ever really ran into anybody that's racist. But you do see fatherless people on all sides of the spectrum. So that means also there's always been, even if Israel was the main subject of this whole story, there's always been, even other nations, people that were fatherless. You have people who, men who had to go to war for their own families and their own nations, and they would die. And then you have fatherless children. We know essentially that the father obviously is the cover of their home. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter obviously if as a dad in your own home, under the Most High. But even if people are not of the Most High, from a natural structure of the household, it's always been the dad, the mother, and then the children. Right? So the Most High is always above as well. So when you don't have a dad in the home, it's obviously going to make it much tougher, no matter if you're in the Most High or not. The dad has always been important. So that's why it's always been misconstrued. Also, when you look at Adam and Eve, literally, y'all, Satan did not go to Adam in his face. In the life of Adam and Eve, in the Greek version, it says that Satan went to the serpent that was in Adam's care, because basically Adam and Eve You can also find this in Jubilees chapter 3. They were over, Eve was over the female animals, and Adam was over the males. So they had a job, they each had their own jobs in the garden, but it was separate. So Satan went to go find the serpent that was in Adam's portion, because the serpent was given the tares. Oddly enough, he was given the tares to eat. Okay, you can go read it for yourself. Life of Adam and Eve in the Greek version. He was given the tares to eat. So he wasn't given the same portion as everybody else. I mean, everybody, it wasn't even like a disrespectful thing, but it was the commandment that was already given, that Adam had already received before he even got in the garden. Okay? So that's what he was just supposed to do. So Satan went over there to talk to the serpent and say, you're the wisest beast of all these animals, and you're given the last of everything. Don't you think that's disrespectful? And serpent is like, well, yeah, and Satan is like, man, let me use you as a cloak so I can destroy these men, because why would the Most High allow Adam and Eve to be over us? Why would he allow them to have this ordained and selected title? Why would he allow them to have this? Let's destroy them. And serpent is like, man, I fear that the Most High is gonna destroy me if I do this. And Satan is like, no, don't worry. I'll do all the work through you. I'm gonna use you. I'm gonna possess your body, and I'm gonna do all the work. So then he did all of that and got the serpent away from Adam, and Adam didn't even see it. And that's when Satan went up to Eve directly in her face with the serpent. Now, there's connections to that, obviously. In Enoch, it does say that there is another angel. The serpent could have been named Gadriel, because it tries to say that Gadriel was the main fallen angel that Satan used to beguile Eve with the serpent. So there's connections you guys can draw from that, but just from a general standpoint, that's basically what happened. I know that was kind of a mouthful. So what am I saying within that story is that Satan went to destroy essentially Eve and take away the dad, take away Adam. He went directly to her, and in that same book, Life of Adam and Eve, Satan had made a pact with Eve and told her that if you're going to do this, I need you also to give to your own husband and make him sin with you. So when you apply that also to the home, I know personally, when Satan comes after me, if I fail, if I mess up, if I get frustrated, if I allow any type of entry, then my whole family gets attacked. That's how important a husband is, or a dad of the home is to his own home. When you allow sins on your own end, even the mother obviously is very important, because both of you guys cover your children. So if Satan can destroy both of you, he gets directed to your children who are not as strong in the Most High. Right? So, but the dad, you take him out, you have chaos. You don't have an overseer. Right? So it's the same thing as creating a fatherless nation, a fatherless home, a fatherless person. Right? So let's continue. We're going to continue to read more scriptures on what the Most High says about the fatherless. So Deuteronomy for chapter 10. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 18. It says, he executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the resident alien, giving him food and clothing, the stranger. He executes righteousness for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the stranger, giving him food and clothing. You are also to love the stranger, since you were resident aliens in the land of Egypt. Let's read chapter 14 of Deuteronomy. Love your neighbor as yourself, y'all. Where do y'all think that came from? Verse 22 of chapter 14, it says, each year you are to set aside a tenth of all the produce grown in your fields. A tenth. You are to eat a tenth of your grain, new wine, and fresh oil, and the firstborn of your herd and flock, in the presence of the Most High, your Elohim, at the place where he chooses to have his name dwell, so that you will always learn to fear the Most High. But if the distance is too great for you to carry it, since the place where the Most High chooses to put his name is too far away from you, since the Most High has blessed you, then exchange it for silver. Take the silver in your hand and go to the place the Most High chooses. You may spend the silver on anything you want: cattle, sheep, goats, wine, beer, anything you desire. And you are to feast there in the presence of the Most High and rejoice with your family. Do not neglect the Levite within your city gates, since he has no portion or inheritance among you. At the end of every 3 years, bring a tenth of all your produce for that year and store it within your city gates. Then the Levite who has no portion or inheritance among you, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow within your city gates may come eat and be satisfied. And the Most High, your Elohim, will bless you in all the work of your hands that you do. So not only were these strangers, the fatherless and the widow, the Most High loves them and cares for them, he also paired them with the Levite, that you are to feed them and to take care of them, just as you would with your own brother, if you are Israel. With your own brother. Where's the room for any disrespect and hate? There's no room. But let's just keep reading. Deuteronomy chapter 16, 10 verse 22. You are to celebrate the festival of weeks for the Most High, your Elohim, with a free will offering that you will give in proportion to how the Most High has blessed you. Rejoice before the Most High in the place where he chooses to have his name dwell, you, your son and your daughter, your male and female slave, the Levite within your city gates, as well as the resident alien, the fatherless, and the widow among you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. Carefully follow these statutes. So you're also supposed to be celebrating these feast days with a stranger who may be in your midst, that obviously is following the Most High, but bring them along. The widow and the fatherless too. Festival of Shelter. So that was the Feast of Weeks. Now this is the Festival of Tabernacles. Verse 13, you are to celebrate the Festival of Shelters for 7 days, and when you have gathered in everything from your threshing floor and winepress. Rejoice during your festival, you, your son and your daughter, your male and female slave, as well as the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow within your city gates. You are to hold a 7-day festival for the Most High in the place he chooses, because the Most High will bless you in all your produce, in all the work of your hands, and you will have abundant joy. So much joy that's being shown and said to have. All your males are to appear 3 times a year before the Most High. I'll just go ahead and skip that. But as you guys can see, the fatherless, the widow, the stranger, the Levite, all connected in giving, being connected to, obviously, while we're reading this, Sirach chapter 4, verse 10. Be as a father to the fatherless. Excuse me. A father takes care of their children. It says, and like a husband to their mother, a husband is tender to their wives. So you will be as a son of the Most High. That qualifies you to be a son of the Most High, or a daughter of the Most High. It says that he will love you more than your mother does. because he truly loves the fatherless, the widows, and the orphans, and the Levite, and his people. But especially the fatherless, especially the orphan and the widow. He cares for them. We already read that it says if you didn't take care of them as well, that he would hear their cries and it will be against you. So what room do we have for hate? Chapter 24. I'm not going to read all of it, but it says these are the marriage and divorce laws. Verse 9. Oh, okay. So it says, verse 9, the subtitle is Consideration for People in Need. Verse 10, it says, when you make a loan of any kind to your neighbor, do not enter his house to collect what he offers as security. Stand outside while the man you are making the loan to brings the security out to you. So that's like easy. Like, don't go in there and disrespect his home. If he is a poor man, do not sleep with the garment he has given as security. So don't sit there and take something from them and say, well, I'm going to use it as collateral until you bring my stuff. We also read that the garment, it's going to tell you right here. It says, be sure to return it to him at sunset. Then he will sleep in it and bless you, and this will be counted as righteousness to you before the Most High. Because the other scripture says that his garment is what he sleeps in. Like, what if you take it as collateral to what he owes you? What is he going to sleep in? You're just going to let him be garmentless, like not gonna give him anything. So again, we apply Matthew chapter 25 and those other verses where he says, if whatever you did unto me, whatever you did unto them, you did unto me. So would you literally let the Son of the Most High be garmentless? That's for you to answer. If you're really that bold and say, yeah, because he owes you something, woe to you. Woe to you. So verse 14, chapter 24, Deuteronomy, it says, do not oppress a hired worker who is poor and needy, whether one of your Israelite brothers or one of the resident aliens in the town in your land. There's the stranger again. For you are to pay him his wages each day before the sun sets, before he is poor and depends on them. Because he is poor and depends on them. Otherwise, he will cry out to the Most High against you, and you will be held guilty. Fathers are not to be put to death for their children, and children are not to be put to death for their fathers. Each person will be put to death for his own sin. Do not deny righteousness to a stranger or fatherless child, and do not take a widow's garment as security. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Most High redeemed you from there. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. When you reap the harvest in your field and you forget a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. It is to be left for the resident alien, for the stranger, for the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Most High may bless you in all your work of your hands. When you knock down the fruit from your olive tree, do not go over the branches again. What remains will be for the resident alien, for the stranger, for the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not take everything, what is left. What remains will be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. Y'all, there's no room. There's no room. There's no room to do anything wrong when you really see all these things. It's going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 26. There's going to be the similar verbiage, and when he repeats it over and over again, he is like, it's serious. This is something he absolutely is trying to tell us, to follow these statutes and commandments. Chapter 26, Deuteronomy, verse 16, it says, the Most High is commanding you this day to follow these statutes and ordinances. Follow them carefully with all your heart and all your soul. Today you have affirmed that the Most High is your Elohim, and that you will walk in his ways, keep his statutes, commands, and ordinances, and obey him. And today the Most High has affirmed that you are his own possession as he has promised you, that you are to keep all his commandments, and that he will elevate you to praise, fame, and glory above all nations he has made, and that you will be a holy people to the Most High as he has promised. So again, that does not come without you following all of his word, which includes taking care of the stranger, not disrespecting them. When I first started learning about Hebrew Israelites, that was one of the biggest things that I ever saw, and I was told, the white man this, the white man that. Somebody literally, I had a conversation yesterday, talking about the white man this and white man that. I didn't get into any details with that person because at the end of the day, I don't even have to go that far with that. It was like he was like trying to verify whether or not he wanted to follow me if I believed that black people were Judah and all this stuff like that. And again, I even asked him, and again, no disrespect to him as well, but I'm just sharing that the details of that conversation, when it came down to that part about white man this, white man that, it's like we get it. I get it, but at the same time, it's like try to find better ways to live in peace with all men, because that's what the scripture says. You don't have to have hate for another person, because there's no room for it. Because either way, that other person is going to be regarded as the son of the Most High, where he says, whatever you did to them, you did unto me. You have no room to not take care of anything in a kind way, to not help those who are in need. There's no room, because you have no authority to say that they're Esau or they're this and that, so I hate them. You have nowhere in the word does it give you any authority to do so. So everybody that claims Esau this and Esau that, especially, you are in sin. And you, woe to you if you project that onto others, because of the fact that people will carry that same mindset to act like they should hate another person and to disregard another person. When you see in the Torah, in the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy, in Exodus, he was telling them that from the very jump. What not to do. And what to do to take care of others. That's what Israel would be known for. That's why Job was known for what he did also, because of how rich he was, and he took care of everybody. Especially the fatherless, especially the widows. Isaiah chapter, am I supposed to read that? Isaiah chapter 1. I also want to make one massive point about this. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. Learn to do what is good, pursue justice, correct the oppressor, defend the rights of the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. And then Zechariah chapter 7, I see here. It's everywhere, y'all. It doesn't give us no room, which is totally fine. For those who really are trying to walk and grow in him, that's totally fine. We should not want any room for sin. Chapter 7 of Zechariah says, verse 8 through 14. It says, the word of the Most High came to Zechariah. The Lord of armies says this: make fair decisions. Show faithful love and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the resident alien, the stranger, or the poor. Do not plot evil in your hearts against one another. But they refuse to pay attention and turn a stubborn shoulder. They close their ears so they cannot hear. They made their hearts like a rock so as not to obey his word, or the words that the Most High of armies had sent by his Spirit through the earlier prophets. Therefore intense anger came from the Most High, just as he had called, and they would not listen. So when they called, I would not listen, says the Most High. I scattered them with a windstorm over all the nations that had not known them, and the land was left desolate behind them with no coming or going. They turned a pleasant land into a desolation. Did you guys realize that oppressing the widow and the fatherless and the stranger, and not loving your neighbor as yourself was a part of literally why Israel did not stay in that land. Now you know. It's that serious. It's that serious. So I think what it was to say, Psalms 146. I'll go ahead and read that. Psalms 146:9. It's a lot more than I thought, y'all. It's always, I thought it was gonna be real quick. I always say that. 146:9. The Most High protects strangers and helps the fatherless and the widow, but he frustrates the ways of the wicked. Simple. Very, very simple and straightforward. All that hate in your heart, you gotta take that out. Don't let these people who don't know the Most High really change your heart and look at people the way that they have painted it. Chapter 10, verse 14. But you yourself have seen trouble and grief, observing it in order to take the matter into your own hands. The helpless one entrusts himself to you. You are a helper of the fatherless. Break the arm of the wicked, evil person, until you look for his wickedness, but it can't be found. Is it disregarding anything that has been done to us in history? Absolutely not. But at the same time, it's been prophesied. These things were gonna happen. But look why it happened. Deuteronomy 28, like you have all these things that says why we would be exposed to certain things over the course of history, because we would not essentially still walk in his ways. So to wrap up this fatherless portion, talks about the fatherless and the orphan and the widow. I want you to really think about it. If we were all born into sin, aren't we all fatherless? If we were all born into sin, and it says that the Most High can only be the one to really pull us in, to really show him his word. If he wasn't a father of his own son, how could his own son do the work that he has done from the very beginning to the very end when he returns? How could anyone, how could we even have this word if he wasn't a father for us or over us? Haven't we all been orphans? What is Ephesians? What is that? Ephesians 2. I didn't write it on there, y'all, but Ephesians 2. I believe it talks about us being orphans and how he's accepted us and brought us into his sheepfold, whether or not you're blood Israel or not, for those who follow him and walk in his ways. I'm trying to find it. It's not my regular word that I read. I'm borrowing one. So chapter 2 of Ephesians, it says, verse 11, so then remember that at one time you were Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcised by those called the circumcised, which is done in the flesh by human hands. At that time you were without Christ, excluded from the citizenship of Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of promise, without hope and without Elohim of the world. But now in Yahushua HaMashiach, who were far away, have been brought near by the blood of him. For he is our peace, who made both groups one and tore down the dividing wall of hostility. We literally have seen that in Deuteronomy, how it shows that there is still hostility. And the reason why the Most High punished them, because they still wanted to have hostility towards the stranger, towards the fatherless, towards the widow, towards the orphans. In his flesh he made of no effect the law, consisting of commands and express in regulations, so that he might create in himself one new man from the two, resulting in peace. So essentially what he's saying is that, obviously, as we know, Mashiach said he did not come to abolish the law. So within him is the Torah. Within him are the instructions on how to create, or how to put on the instructions of the Torah. So the same same moment happened with I don't remember her name, but when the lady was at the well, I believe, and the Mashiach said, like basically was giving her help, and I think that's even one of the ones that the Hebrew Israelites like heavy his Hebrew Israelite camps, they try to use that one, and they try to say, well, a stranger is called a dog. Like, I get it, but don't have hate when you're using that scripture to sit there and say, well, strangers are only dogs. Like, it's a little bit different when you really read the context of the whole scripture. But he still was helping a quote unquote Gentile. He still was giving hope and blessing them because they were a Gentile. It didn't matter unto the Most High. I mean, to the Mashiach, that he still was going to do his duty to help them and to help the fatherless, help the needy, help the orphan, help the widow. And in doing so, he shows you that you do have to be a new man. You do have to understand how to have that peace, just like Job, had a peace in his heart where he was a cheerful giver. So I don't have to read more of Ephesians 2 because I would have to keep breaking that down. I'm not trying to do that. But we are essentially all fatherless. We were all fatherless. We were all orphans at one point. We were all widows at one point. So notice here, this next part, and I'm gonna go back to this one. For Yahushua Mashiach, the other concept of it, well, you'll find in Hosea chapter 2, verse 16, you'll see that it says that he's Ishi. He's the husband. He's the bridegroom. Right? And then we are supposed to be his bride. A lot of people may not agree with that, but there's a lot of portions of it that where not only is Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem is his bride, but sometimes there's going to be connections, and the word will show that we are his bride as well. So there's going to be like different. It's all different types of connections. You just have to really divide it well to make sure you know the whole portion of it. But also, the Mashiach came in his father's name. So even when we're saying Yahushua HaMashiach, you really are saying his father's name. You're using his father's name as well because Yahushua is Savior. It means saving or salvation or saving. And Hamashiach is the anointed one of his father. So you're literally using his father's name. Some people say Yahuwah, some people say Hawashi, or different portions of it, but you have his father's name no matter what attached to him, no matter what. So when you read John 17, you see that he's telling you the hierarchy. He's telling you his father is way above him. That he used what his father gave him to give to his people when he was here. Right? And there's even more throughout the book of John or the gospel, Hebrew gospels, that he'll tell you like, my father is above me. He never came proclaiming that he was ever above the Father. So there have been people in history that have tried to make him what he wasn't, like a god in the sense of above the Father, or you have Mashiach as like the only one, where you have more Christians will sit there and just only praise him and say like he's the only one, when you cannot forget about the Father, because if so, you're essentially making the Son fatherless. When you don't read the OT and you don't connect the OT, you are essentially making the Son fatherless. He's not even a son at that point. So, little concepts. But 2nd Esdras chapter 1 through 2, also it tells you, this is a actual conversation or actual words that the Mashiach is actually telling you. He's actually talking to Ezra and telling him like a whole process. I actually did an Ezra study with a brother. He doesn't follow me anymore. He actually blocked me, but because I didn't agree with his main things that he puts out as far as the luminaries is concerned. But outside of that, but I don't have a relationship with him anymore. But I did do an extra study I still appreciated that time that I did have, and that you guys can find it on my page if you guys want to. You probably won't find it on his page, but it's like in the mentions or something in my profile. Like if you go to it, you'll see like the main post, but then I think it's like a button you click where it says like people or something like that. But I don't think it's there because since I'm already blocked, it won't attach it to his profile, I guess. But you guys can see that, and if you scroll down, the extra studies are all there. So we was able to really break down a lot of things like that. So with this chapter 1 and 2, you literally get to see the Mashiach. He's actually talking to Ezra, and then he's actually revealed that this is what Ezra sees in his vision, that it was a Mashiach that was putting the Son of the Most High, that was putting the crowns on people once they actually was judged as righteous. But in the chapter 1, he says that, verse 24, he says, "What will I do to you, O Jacob, you Judah? You would not obey me. I will turn myself to other nations, and I will give my name to them, that they may keep my statutes." This is chapter 1. "Seeing you have forsaken me, I will forsake you." So essentially being fatherless, orphans, widows. "You have asked me to be merciful to you. I will have no mercy on you. Whenever you will call on me, I will not hear you, for you have defiled your hands with blood, and your feet are swift to commit manslaughter. You have not, as it were, forsaken me, but your own selves, says the Most High." The Most High says, technically this is Mashiach talking. He says, "Have I not pleaded with you as a father his sons?" He's not saying he is our father. He's saying as a father his sons, as a mother her daughters, and a nurse her young babies, that you would be my people and I should be your Elohim, that you would be my children, I should be your father. So now notice here in chapter 2 what he's going to say, okay? So again, you got to divide stuff correctly, because when you take one verse out of context, everything is messed up. So in chapter 2, Mashiach says, "I brought this people out of bondage, and I gave them my commandments by my servants the prophets, whom they would not hear, but set my counsels at nothing. The mother," so this is Jerusalem, what he's saying. He said, "The mother that bears them says to them, Go your way, O my children, for I am a widow and forsaken. I brought you up with gladness, and with sorrow and heaviness I have lost you. For you have sinned before the Most High, and have done that which is evil before me. But what will I do to you? Now do to you. I am a widow and forsaken. Go your way, O my children, ask mercy from the Most High." Okay, so that's what he says the mother, Jerusalem, has said. So at this time, you guys can find so many themes of Jerusalem being spotted with blood, with sin, being called a harlot. It's a lot, you guys. It's like a lot of connections with the relationship with Jerusalem and us, and how for so long there's been so much sins and things of that nature, and it's a lot. It's a lot of connections you guys can find. So in verse 5, now he switches. This is the person of Mashiach speaking. He says, "As for me, O Father," talking to his father, "I call on you for a witness over the mother of these children, because they would not keep my covenant, that you bring to them to confusion, and their mother to a plunder, that they may be no offspring in them." So he's telling them what happens. He's telling them the judgment, essentially, in this chapter. But then he's obviously going to switch it up, where later on he's going to say in verse 23, "I will give you the first place in my resurrection." So again, I can't really break down these two chapters, but you guys have to read it for yourself. And then you have to really read what Ezra says in verse 34, where he says, "I testify of my Savior. I look for your shepherd, but I testify of my Savior openly." Okay? So just very simple things for you guys to read, essentially. But what I do believe, what I've read, it's very hard in like the book of Isaiah, Exodus. It's very hard to see where the Son of the Father has been. I've been called idol worshiper as well, because obviously, people take certain things out of context when it comes down to this whole word. It's a lot that has happened in this community overall. But outside of that, even in Enoch, you will see that the son was given an exalted title, an exalted role. In the Shepherd of Hermas similitudes, I'm not going to read that chapter 5 just for a sake of time, but it says that the father gave his own son counsel on how to take care of various things throughout this whole history of man, to put people in positions like Enoch and Abraham and Noah and all these different people so that things can go in the ways that it's supposed to go and how history is supposed to happen. And that is not far off at all, because you do see Moses. He was so frustrated at one point trying to help Israel and trying to deal with all their problems that he couldn't even handle it, right? But then his father-in-law came into him and said, hey, like, set different people, elders, leaders over all of these matters, so that way when you get to you can just handle the biggest ones. You can have different people do the work and lead the different Israelites or different, problems that they have. Let them handle it because they're ordained to do so, but you just deal with the bigger ones, right? So there's various concepts on that to connect why the father would give his son counsel, because the father, he is the ultimate. He is the highest. He's the one that you can't come to him, and no one has ever seen him and lived, right? As Isaiah has spoken. So I do believe that the son was the one that was appearing a lot of times. Of course, there's angels here, there's angels there. There's a lot of things, but that's just how I've read it and how I've seen it. And can provide scripture connections to it. But essentially, going back to the fatherless, the son has essentially acted as a father to us. But he says that he is our friend. That's why he said, do not call me Lord. Don't call me master. Call me friend. Because he's making us friends with the Father. He's bringing us to him. He's cleansing us, sanctifying us, and really getting us to be new men. And he's going to give us our new body towards the end so we can actually be in the presence of his Father. We have to be so set apart to be in the presence of his Father that it's nothing we can do on our own end but to do what he's asking us to do first and foremost, and he's going to take care of the rest. And we get to do it in his spirit. So it's just like, really, what are you doing on your own merit but literally applying his word to you so it can work in you and to help others, help the fatherless, so that way you understand that you were once fatherless. You were once an orphan. You were once a widow. To help those who are literally in your midst who are fatherless. Orphans, widows. Okay? So I hope that made sense. You'll probably have to rewind that to really kind of break that down on your own to see, what I'm talking about. But I hope that just made sense in a very general way. But let me go back to here. What can you do to help the fatherless and the orphan and the widow? What can you do? Essentially, the first thing that you have to understand is obviously love your neighbor as yourself. You never know who is fatherless, who actually doesn't have a dad, who doesn't have parents. You never know who was actually an orphan, or who lived with their grandmother, raised by their grandparents, and not their own parents. You never know who lost their husband, and got remarried or something. You never know, or who just doesn't have their own husband. Obviously, as a widow, you never know who you're going to come across the grocery store, on the freeway, while you're honking at that person and get upset, talking trash. You just never know who you're speaking to, who you're interacting with. So essentially, understanding to love your neighbor as yourself, it doesn't give you any room not to treat people with kindness, right? If someone finds that corny, hey, but this is our word. This is what we are supposed to do. That's your character. But also, what else can you do for the fatherless and the orphan and the widow? What about in your city? Maybe there's a orphanage, or Maybe you know that there's some a widow, living on your street. Something. Maybe find something more that you can do to help. Right? Obviously, giving money is going to be the easiest thing, but maybe you see that they need new clothes or something, like gift cards. I don't know. Just be creative. Pray about it and see maybe what you can do. It's not saying you got to do it monthly or weekly or whatever, but you got to pray on it and make sure the Most High is going to guide you to do it because you actually want to do it. You actually want to fulfill these things that He's asking us to do in kindness, to take care of the stranger, to help the stranger, help the widow, help the fatherless, help the people that are around you, not just your own family. Of course, it's family first, right? But just again, if you have the means to help others, even if it's a prayer or say hello or something, y'all, we could do better. So that's just a question I just definitely want to ask for others. And then the rest here, y'all. So going back to, and this one is, we're just gonna breeze through this one, because you guys can definitely do more research on this one. Verse 10 was the biggest portion of this study, so that's what I wanted to spend the most time on. Verses 11 through 19 is very, very, very simple, but it's very powerful. So verse 11 in chapter 4 of Sirach says, wisdom exalts her sons and takes hold of those who seek her. So remember the verse 10 that says it before, it says that you are a son of the Most High if you are a father to the fatherless and a husband to their mother, like a husband to their mother. And obviously, as we've seen with all the Deuteronomy verses and all that stuff like that, you're taking care and actually loving your neighbor as yourself. So you are considered a son of the Most High, right? So now it says wisdom, because wisdom dwells with you. She exalts her sons and takes hold of those who seek her, because you're seeking His instruction. That's what wisdom is. It's a culmination of wisdom. It's a culmination of the fear, of the righteousness, of the things, of the works that you'll be able to do through her. Verse 12, it says, he who loves her loves life. Those who seek her early will be filled with gladness. He who holds her fast will inherit glory. There he enters, the Most High will bless. Those who serve her minister to the Holy One. The Most High loves those who love her. He loves those who love her. He who gives her to her, he who gives ear to her will judge the nations. He who heeds her will dwell securely. So we're still talking about wisdom. If he trusts her, he will inherit her, and his generations will possess her. For at the first she will walk with him in crooked ways, and will bring fear and dread on him and torment him with her discipline, until she may trust his soul and try him by her judgments. Then she will return him again to the straight way, and will be gladdened in him and reveal to him her secrets. If he goes astray, she will forsake him and hand him over to his own fall. That's very powerful, y'all. So sometimes when you're going through things, you have to understand that's why in Hebrews chapter 12, it talks about not running from his discipline. That involves the wisdom. In wisdom of chapter 6 in Solomon, verses 13 through 14, it talks about loving his discipline. It talks about loving the ways and caring for his instruction. Right? So even if it's hard, if it's tough, you got to remember the testament of Job. Even though he had all those riches, it was taken from him. He set his heart to do good in the Most High, and the Most High told him the enemy is coming right around the corner to take all and strike you and to tear you up. And you have to fight like an athlete to continue to follow in the narrow ways. And Job understood, and he's like, I'm ready for it. I'm going to do it, because I'm going to follow you to the end. Right? So caring for the Most High's instruction and walking in his ways and going through the discipline and really not folding through all the things that you're going to go through in your trial and tribulation, and understanding that you are being refined. You are being tried as fire, as gold in the fire. So wisdom is going to do that to you so that way she can dwell in you always. But you have to do the things that wisdom is requiring you to do, which is seek her early. It's the same thing as her, it's him. It's the Most High. It's literally the wisdom was there with the Father, just as the Son was there with the Father when the Holy Spirit, and they made things. That's why you read Proverbs 8, and she'll tell you that. She was there from the beginning. She's there in all his ways. So you do have to find out, how do I gain wisdom? How do I gain more understanding? What is she telling me to do? Right? And I have studies on that, y'all, if you need it. It's the foundation study. So I go in detail with the wisdom, righteousness, and sin, and righteousness and fear, if you need it. All right, let's finish this out. Verse 20, observe the opportunity and beware evil. Do not be ashamed of your soul, for there is a shame that brings sin, and there is a shame that is glory and grace. Do not show partiality against your soul. Do not revere any man to your falling. So that one is very prevalent, I think, in this community. People revere a man or a woman to their own falling. They listen to every single thing a person says, to the point where they don't even look into the things that they're talking about. They don't take time to actually go study and make sure they verify it. Like I tell you guys, these studies are for your own guidance and to be able to refer back to it, to be able to, to have it easier if it's a guide. If you don't need it, you don't need it, right? But I'm essentially just trying to help guide you guys to show you something more in the scriptures, and then you can go read it for yourself, and so you have a little bit more understanding, right? But if I sit here and tell you guys certain things where it's only, I'm saying, well, it's only this is only the name, it's only this, it's only that, and you can't contact me, and if I'm making you feel like I'm combative or anything like that, that's a false shepherd, or that's a bad teacher. We have to be able to clean those things up and do better. So again, people sell their souls to even someone like that, to the point where they don't even know that they're following something that is totally false, and they just can't see it because they have the wool over their eyes. And the Most High will give people over to their own desires. So if you desire to revere a person to the point where you don't revere his word and don't fear that you could be possibly making a mistake, more than sitting there and truly having meekness towards the Most High, to make sure you study to show yourself approved, but you rather revere and fear man and fear the people, so they don't see you a certain way as not following their doctrine, it's you got something real messed up, and you have to repent of that and change that as soon as possible before it's too late. It's verse 23. Do not refrain from speaking. It is for safety. Do not hide your wisdom for the sake of seeming fair. For wisdom will be known by speech, and the instruction by the word of the tongue. So I know I have experience with that. Do not refrain from speaking when it is for safety. Do not hide your wisdom for the sake of seeming fair. I've done that plenty of times. Only in this community though. Just to help the brotherhood and camaraderie of things. Especially on talk about his name and things like that, and of course the luminaries, of course, because of the followers that I had that are connected to a certain ideology. But I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just not speak on certain things, so I had to wait for the right time, and it really was out of being fair. I was really trying to be respectful. I wasn't trying to make people hate or feel like they are being attacked. You guys I've never brought anything out that should ever make you feel that way, but it's a spirit in people that tend to offend them, that make them offended. And a lot of times the same people that are offended, they won't actually go read it for themselves to really see what it's talking about, because they're holding on to something that they're scared to let go. Right? And it's very interesting. But at least from my own experience, I have held back wisdom, or held back things that I know the Most High wanted me to say, because of fairness, because of me trying to be more respectful to others' feelings. But at the same time, the word is the word. So he tells me to speak, I have to speak. Verse 25, do not speak against the truth and be ashamed for your ignorance. Do not speak against the truth and be shamed for your ignorance. Do not be ashamed to confess your sins, and do not fight the river's current. Do not lay up for yourselves down for a fool to tread on, and do not be partial to one that is mighty. Strive for the truth to death, and the Most High will fight for you. Do not be hasty with your tongue, or slack or negligent in your deeds, and do not be like a lion in your house, or suspicious of your servants. Do not let your hand be stretched out to receive and closed when you should repay. Okay? So that is the end of Sirach chapter 4. There are some notes in here that I may not have wasn't able to cover. But essentially the biggest portion of this chapter was about the fatherless, the widow, and the orphan, and to also ensure that you guys look into those things and try to help those who are around you, and that there is no room to treat anyone wrong at all. If you have the means also to help others, do so. Do it out of the cheerfulness of your own heart, not out of spite or just because you see that it's a commandment. Do it in the right heart, in the right spirit, in spirit and in truth, and look into all these things, right? And again, shout out to my brothers as well, in our group, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this study, and I look forward to doing some more studies when I can, if possible. But I appreciate y'all, and hopefully this was a good eye opener. And again, to leave off on this question: what can you do to help the fatherless, the orphan, and the widow? Shalom, shalom, y'all.